Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Leaders Podcast is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, with interviews and advice on building your professional network, brand, and a purposeful second income from students, residents, and innovative professionals.
Let's do some mock interviews. So we're going to do 3 mock interviews, one about culture, one about work experience and career, and then a third about pharmacist-specific questions. So let's get started with talking about questions that establish your how you fit into the culture, and not only a little bit about your personality, but how that personality would fit. So we want to make sure that it is a good fit, because it's certainly something that's so important to being happy within the job, but it's also one of the toughest things to explain. Could you maybe explain what culture and fit means from the employer side of things?
This is something I'm very passionate about, because I am lucky enough to work within a company that has an amazing work culture. So having a strong work culture means that the company prides themselves in the way that they treat their employees, and as well as the way the employees interact with each other. If you've ever, been in an awkward office, or maybe a classroom where not all the students get along together, or maybe a study group where, half of you get along, the other half of you don't, it can just be such a burden, and it's not as productive as an environment where everybody gets along, the company respects the employees, and the employees respect the company. There has to be a belief in both your employees and your employees of the company as well. For me, for instance, I do sales. We have a great culture. I love the office that I work in. I don't have those days where I just dread coming to work, because I know everybody that I work with respects me and I respect them, and we have a very productive team. But also, I'm able to do my job well because I believe in what I'm doing. I believe in the company that I'm representing. And so companies are really focusing on this as a huge part of what they're looking for in their people they're interviewing. They've worked hard for employee retention. They don't want to have the turnover. Training is very expensive for companies. And so they want to make sure that you're going to be a good fit before they invest all that time and really money into your employment. So if you're working somewhere and it just doesn't seem like you're going to get along with the ancillary staff, or you're not going to be a good fit for the patient clientele that's in that area, companies are going to look for that, especially with the large volume of pharmacist applicants that they get on a daily basis. They want to make sure you're going to fit in. You're going to invest your time within them, and they'll do the same for you.
Okay, well, great. Well, let's start this mock interview, and what we're going to do is we're going to have you act as the interviewee. So let's give you some characteristics first of all. So you're pharmacy, should we make you a 4th-year pharmacy student, or maybe a new graduate that has been out a year? What do you think?
I would say a new graduate that's been out a year. I think that would be most.
Okay. So you've graduated a year ago. Did you do residency, or have you been working in a community pharmacy for a year?
Yeah, let's do community pharmacy, maybe working as an intern through the part of rotations through school.
Okay. So you've worked through rotations. You were an intern, so you have experience as a technician, but you have no experience as a pharmacist. Does that sound right? Okay. All right, great. So let's start with the first question. And just for everyone, this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to ask you the question. You're going to act as if you're the applicant. And then we're going to have a little chat about the difficulties with the question, challenges, and certainly the traps that some of these questions have in them. And they're not necessarily trying to trap you to be mean. They're just trying to make sure that you're being honest with not only them, but honest with yourself about what you want. So you've just graduated pharmacy school, Kelly. You've passed your boards. You've passed the very difficult California Pharmacy Jurisprudence exam, which is almost like the boards also. And here you are, and maybe you didn't see a job that you liked while you were in pharmacy school. You just wanted to take a little time to think about it. But now here you are in an interview ready to start your career. And the first question out of the gate, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So recent pharmacy grad, I love working with people. So I'm really looking for a role where I can be patient facing and work on work with customer service within a community pharmacy. I did do some internships through my rotations, and I really enjoyed working with the public, doing more of a retail setting. So now I'm looking for a role that will allow me some growth, maybe to become a pharmacy manager and lead a team of staff at a local community pharmacy.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about what you want to make sure is in that answer. Tell me a little bit about yourself. And you literally kept it to under a minute. And I feel like that would be a very easy place to ramble. So tell me a little bit about what you were thinking as I asked that question and how you put your answer together.
So when you're talking about yourself, I don't necessarily think people are looking for your whole life story. That's something that can come later in more detailed interviews, but you also don't want to lose your interviewee either. You want to make sure they understand what you're looking for. So right off the bat, they know if it's going to match what they're looking for. And if you do have any goals to grow within a company, if you want to move up as a manager or in some type of leadership role, I would say it as soon as possible. If they're just looking for somebody to float around, from location to location, they're going to be honest with you and let you know, at this time, there might not be as much growth opportunity for you, but they know what you're looking for. And so they can easily match it with what they're looking for.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, well, let's go on to the next question that I expect that they would ask. And they've got some things on the CV, so I just want to make sure that we're clear to the listeners that you don't tell them what's on your CV. But here's the question. So, Kelly, what made you decide to become a pharmacist?
Early on, I was always very fascinated with medications and how they worked. I had a lot of family members that were on, multiple medications, and it interested me so much. I wanted to, work within that field. I was very interested in a medical profession, but didn't necessarily want to be a physician treating the patient. I would rather, work with the patient, make sure they're taking the correct medications. And as I continued through school, it just continued to be a really good fit for, what I was looking for.
Again, you had a very concise answer, but it was full of content. It said that you're genuinely interested in becoming a pharmacist rather than a physician, but you still want that face-to-face contact. You still want to work with the patients, just in a little bit of a different way. What things do you make sure are in the answer to that question?
I think it's important to establish that you are passionate about what you're doing, what your career is. So, and not everybody's going to have a story where, they've been dreaming of being a pharmacist since they were, 5 years old. A lot of times it's, a family trade, or, they finished school, didn't necessarily want to go on to a separate medical school to become a physician. So it's important to, even if you don't have a cute little story to talk about why you are at least passionate about the craft. What interests you about being a pharmacist? Because most employers want to make sure you're passionate about the work that they do. They want to make sure you're going to continue to have interest in your profession. And so I think it's important to at least have some sort of idea of what makes you happy to be a pharmacist, or what attracted to you to the field at some point.
Okay, well, this next one, it's very uncomfortable for pharmacists to talk about themselves in a positive way, so hopefully you'll be able to kind of navigate that. But Kelly, tell me a little bit about your strengths.
I would say my number one strength that I have is customer service. I do love working with patients. I love dealing with people. It's a skill that I have gained from working, odd jobs through my different education levels. And it's what attracted me the most during my rotations. I would also say that problem solving is one of my better skills as well. It's important to be able to break down situations and not get overheated or take things personal, to look at what the issue is, be objective, and find a solution to the problem. I'm also very big on, being timely and sticking to a task, as well as being a team player. I think those are things that are really important to me. So I work hard to make them my strengths as well.
Okay, well, I think they would ask follow-up questions certainly, but tell me a little bit about what made you, put that answer together. You've kind of checked off all the boxes that as an employer I would want. This is going to be somebody that's working with our customers well, wants to be in a service role, definitely is thinking about the consumer first, also is a team player. Did you put into that answer? What did you think about as you were answering it?
Definitely want to, and it's going to depend on what setting you're applying yourself to. If you're going to be working in, say, a closed door pharmacy and you have awesome customer service skills, it might not be relevant to the role that you're talking about. So look at yourself, know what your strengths are, just pick a couple of them and pick the ones that are going to merge together for the role that you're applying yourself to. I personally do love customer service. That's one of my favorite things. So it's easy for me to talk about customer service, and I wouldn't apply to a closed door setting because it wouldn't be who I am. I couldn't sit behind a desk and not talk to anybody all day. It would drive me crazy. So pick your attributes that are most positive, that you truly believe in, and match it to the role that you're applying to. So for me, there's customer service and also teamwork, because any customer service oriented role, there's going to be some frustrating times with unhappy patients. It gets very stressful. You feel overworked. And so making sure that you've established that you can also be a team player and have a good rapport with your coworkers is very important as well.
Okay, this next question is an absolute trap. I'm telling you ahead of time, but tell me about your weaknesses.
I would say my biggest weakness is that I talk a lot. I do love dealing with people, and I, will get consumed in a conversation with a patient because I enjoy talking to people. I let customers ask me as many questions as they want to, and I let myself get completely wrapped up in them. So it's not that it's completely bad weakness to have, but once in a while can be an issue when we're busy, but it is something that's important to me, to make sure I have a good rapport with our customers.
That's a very honest answer, and I would hire you just for your honesty with that one. Robert Sarr from Australia, he has a podcast out there, and he talked about how they did some consulting, and there was a group of the pharmacy staff was all talkers at one pharmacy, and they were all kind of the people that just wanted to grind the stuff out and do the work but didn't want to talk to anyone at a different pharmacy. And the solution was actually to start trading and to put them together because it didn't work to have just one or the other. Tell me about how you just basically turned a weakness into a strength by saying, look, this is what I do, but sometimes I may talk too much, which would be worse which is not as bad as maybe saying, well, I just really don't want to talk to the customer. But but tell me a little bit about how you kind of turn that weakness into really a reflection of genuine honesty and just knowing who you are.
Yeah, you have to, this is one of the most important questions because it is absolutely a trap. And I would say this is one of those questions you need to be prepared to answer. We all have weaknesses. I'm not going to tell a future employer that, once in a while I have bad time management skills, or I may not be the most organized. You don't want to give answers about your weaknesses that you can't draw a positive item from. Because I do have a lot of experience in customer service, I do know myself pretty well. I have worked in pharmacy, so I know that when my favorite patients roll around, it's going to take forever for me to get away from them and get back on track. But if you're applying for a role in kind of a community setting, future employers are looking for people that are able to build relationships, and having the ability to, to talk to people, continue that conversation. I mean, they're always going to, give you a side eye and, try to rush you along to get you back to the task that you were trying to complete. But it's not as bad as, saying, "Oh, I'm always late," or,
Oh,
you know what,
no.
just,
Yeah.
you don't want to give an answer that they can't get a positive reaction from. So, look at who you are. If you're somebody that really doesn't like to talk to people, you could say, one of my weaknesses that can also be seen as a strength, I mean, you can always pair those up together as well, is that I am very motivated to stay on task. And, I will stop to answer a customer's question, or I will stop to make sure that this patient's getting an appropriate consultation. However, I discontinue the conversation in a timely manner so that I can get back to queuing the rest of these prescriptions that I need to keep my attention on. So whatever your weakness is, make sure you can flip it to a positive reaction. It's just
definitely. Okay, well, it's they also want to know that you have accomplishments or awards, and I think people are always worried about that. They didn't get the super student award, they didn't get the award for being president of a group. So let's ask the next question and see how you go with it. So, Kelly, tell me maybe about an accomplishment that you're really proud of.
I am most proud of finishing pharmacy school on the within the time span that I told myself I was going to. Taking the accelerated plan of 3 years was very difficult. I wasn't able to, hang out with my friends as much and do all the fun things that they were doing since they already graduated from their 4-year university. So I'm proud that I was able to dedicate myself to the school, to my passion in pharmacy, and to finish it, take the exams, and get my license within a timely manner.
Okay. And that's really a genuine, very quick hit. I can do something quickly, I can make sacrifices, and what I'm hearing as an employer is I'm talking to someone that's willing to make sacrifices to my company because she's also made sacrifices for herself. So can you talk a little bit more about your answer to that one?
Absolutely. I mean, it's always great to talk about those awards if you've gotten them. If you were able to get into a specific program, or, maybe even talk about a residency that you were able to get into. I would just say don't gloat too much about all the different awards. You want to pick one, maybe two things that shows that you have drive, that you're able to stay on task and to continue with your goals. Having employees that come in and aren't able to make, those sacrifices of, it's a really busy day. Can you stay over maybe like 10 more minutes just so we can, finish up with these charts, or, whatever the task is. They want to make sure you're able to dive into the role and continue with what you said you were going to. I think that's really important. Anybody joining, whether it's through school or, a new role with a new company, they want to make sure you have that longevity, and they want to make sure you're going to do your best, make those sacrifices, and that you're in it for the long run. Even if you don't want to be a manager, you just want to be a long-standing staff pharmacist, that's okay too. But that you're in it for the long run, I think, is the biggest point there.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's ask another question that we usually hear. So, Kelly, I just actually finished running the America's Finest City Half Marathon down in San Diego. I just love running. What is something you like to do outside of pharmacy?
Outside of pharmacy, I am a jiu-jitsu practitioner. I've been training for about 2 years, and I found that being able to, get on the mats and get some of that energy out, some of that frustration from constantly studying, just being a part of another team that's like a family, has been very beneficial to me keeping sane during my pharmacy school year.
Sure. And just to speak to your answer, I've actually found that this question, I interviewed hundreds and hundreds of pharmacy students in the time that I was a student and then after, and I always found that just the way the brain works, they're trying to anchor to something that they can make you unique. And honestly, I could see you being in the applicant pool as the jiu-jitsu person, because that's
Right.
so unique. And so tell me a little bit about your answer and how you came up with it.
Well, I actually do train jujitsu, so that is something that, I talk about because it has helped me. But I think more than that, everybody has something that they're into that's a little bit different than their friends. There's always something that makes you stand out in your friends group, in your family. So choose something that, like you said, will make you stand out in the applicant pool, but also talk about what it does for you, because we all don't have hobbies just to kill time. Obviously there's something within that hobby that we do that makes us feel better as a person. And if you can show that you do have an outlet, you have something that you're just as passionate about as the pharmacy field, it just shows employers that you're a more well-rounded person, and that you do notice that from time to time you need a little stress relief, so that, when they're overworking you, 13-hour days in a couple months, they know you're going to be okay. You're not going to snap.
Yeah. Well, let's before we get to the last question, would you maybe have, even though they didn't ask you exactly that, would you maybe put that in the first answer where you say, tell me a little bit about yourself? So you maybe talk, 4/5 professional, and then just put a fifth, like, and by the way, I also do jiu-jitsu, and just to kind of make yourself personable. Would that be something somebody could do?
Absolutely. You can. I found in a lot of the interviews that our candidates have been on is they always ask those two questions. So the hobbies is going to come up, but it's not a bad idea just to kind of trace upon it a little bit. I wouldn't go into too much detail in it within the first question, especially if, you're anticipating they're going to go back to another question similar to that later on within the interview. But you can definitely mix in a little personal with your professional. I think those first initial questions are just to see how you're going to come out, to them, like your initial appearance, your initial response. They're going to see how comfortable you are talking to them. It's kind of an icebreaker too, a little bit. You're always really nervous, when you go on these interviews. So turning it around to ask you a couple things about yourself can sometimes break the ice to make you feel a little more comfortable.
Okay, and then a last question for fit and personality. So you've certainly dealt with difficult situations, Kelly. Can you tell me a time where you've had a difficult or challenging situation, and what did you do to work through that?
I, have been a part of quite a few difficult / frustrating situations, within working through community pharmacy. I think one of the biggest issues I faced during my time as an intern was a patient came in when we had a floating pharmacist there. It was a brand new pharmacist. They've never worked in our store. They didn't really know our patients, and they flat out refused to fill one of our patient's prescriptions. The patient came back to us and was very upset because the pharmacist wouldn't fill it. And, as an intern, you just feel like you're a little stuck in the situation because physically you can't fill it yourself. You have to work with your other pharmacists at that time to, see if it's appropriate to fill. So what I ended up doing was addressing the patient because they were very upset. So I talked to the patient, and then I let them know that I would give them a call back and kind of look into the situation for them just to provide, some additional clarity. I ended up talking to the pharmacist that was on duty at that time, and they knew about the situation and said that the patient actually wasn't due for their refill. And, it was a narcotic, so it was a very time-sensitive issue. So I think the biggest pull from that was that, when you're dealing with both staff and patients, you have to make sure that you're going to, address the patient in a respectful manner. So I made sure to follow up with them and let them know that it just wasn't ready to be filled yet. And, you could pick it up in 3 days. That's when your prescription is due. But also, I wanted to make sure that the staff pharmacist had the respect of, filling that prescription with his own license. Obviously, there's a reason he wasn't going to fill it. And so I think just kind of, being stuck in the middle was not fun, but being able to work through both sides and stay respectful of the patient's situation as well as the pharmacist situations helped me through it and, helped me keep their respect as well.
As a supervisor, I would be saying, this is wonderful. I'm not going to get a call every time this person is in the field, because what you're doing is you're proving that you can do what needs to be done as a pharmacist, even though at the time you were a technician. And as a supervisor, I would be like, okay, I can trust that this person's going to at least be a first line, take care of all the problems that shouldn't be escalated to me. And then maybe if they do need me, they'll really, it'll be something that, it really needs my attention. What were you thinking when you were answering that question?
Well, if you've had any time like through your rotation, things like this come up. I mean, patients' narcotic refills probably cause the most issues within any community pharmacy, outpatient pharmacy, even, closed door mail order. That's something that's going to happen all the time. But it is important to show your future employer that you, number one, you respect their patients. Patient care is, the forefront of their business, regardless of what setting you're in. Those patients have to be taken care of, and they have to feel like they're respected so that they'll continue coming back. But your, fellow pharmacists that you're working with also need the respect of the benefit of the doubt. And, you worked so hard to get that license. If there's a reason they didn't feel comfortable filling it, you have to respect that, because at that time it was their license on the line, not yours. So as a tech, as an intern, I did deal with that quite a bit, just kind of being in the middle between pharmacists and the patient. So I would say find a situation that you've been in where you've had to kind of not play both sides, but you've had to see the big picture and look for a solution within there. You want your employers to see that you are able to, not get frustrated, not take that upset patient and their attitude personal, and, ask both sides, see what's going on. It makes you look more well-rounded, and they're able to solve difficult problems that come up all the time in any pharmacy.
Okay, well, I've asked 7 of the very tough questions that you'll get with culture and fit. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we move on to the next section?
No, I would just say, for those, definitely find solutions and find positivities in the answers that you're giving, because employers do notice that. If you're able to solve problems or have a positive outlook on difficult situations, it'll definitely help you throughout the process.
Awesome.
Support for this episode comes from the audiobook Memorizing Pharmacology, a relaxed approach. With over 9,000 sales in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, it's the go-to resource to ease the pharmacology challenge. Available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon.com, in print, ebook, and audiobook. Thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag #PharmacyLeaders.